Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Manila. How are you doing?
I'm less discombobulated today. I've learned that, Ted, in your mid 40s, you really can't try to party like a rock star and expect to recover the next day.
Yeah, it
It,
doesn't it doesn't improve. Trust me.
especially
It,
in a New Jersey wedding.
oh, having been to a few of those, yeah. Was it a? Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna be a classist bastard here. Was this a high-end wedding, or was this like sort of a ticky-tacky where it's like there's the cheesy DJ like, and now dancing as bride and groom for the very first time, or was
I
it like
thought that was obligatory in all weddings,
the
but no, it
garter?
was
Was the garter thing? Did they do the garter? The
no,
garter
no, they
is the
didn't do
test.
that. It was a very, very high end,
Hmm.
probably the most beautiful wedding I've been to ever.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know there were places like this in New Jersey.
No, New Jersey has well, it's like Springfield in The Simpsons. Like it has everything.
Oh,
I mean, seriously, how like in Springfield, there's like a canyon and there's an inner city and
yeah.
there's the suburbs. And, I talked to Matt Groening about that and he was like saying that like it was all intentional to create this huge world, right? And like
Right.
that New Jersey is like that, even though it's a small state, it's about the
No
same
idea.
size as Israel. It has like a
Oh,
lot of varied topography. It has mountains. It has
I didn't know that.
glorious beaches, different kinds of beaches. It has the
Huh.
industrial wasteland outside of Newark in New York. It
Right.
has it
You
has
drive
like
through that.
high-end suburbs. It has forests. It has rolling
Yeah,
hills.
I was
It has
really
horse
amazed.
country. It has a
I
lot
was
going on.
amazed.
Farmland,
Like
a lot of
the little
farmland.
bits I'd had experience with New Jersey was not this. I always thought of it, sorry everyone in New Jersey. I always thought of it as, like a shitty neighbor to New York City, and you only
Yeah,
live there
that's
because it's cheaper
well,
and
you
you
could see
travel
that.
into the city. But
People think that because they if they're in New York and they go to like say
right.
Philadelphia or DC, they take the New Jersey Turnpike and they see all the
Yes.
oil
Oh,
refineries on the side of
that's
the
and that's where
turnpike
when
and
I
all
drove
that.
up the
Yeah,
turnpike. Ugh.
and probably the ugliest but coolest ugly bridge I think I've ever seen, the Pulaski Skyway
That
in Newark, which is a monster, but it's
yes.
cool as hell, but it's ugly as shit. I mean, it's from the
Yes.
you remember it from The Sopranos. You see Tony driving across it. But
Oh, is that what
anyway,
that is?
and
Yeah.
I'm glad we're talking about New Jersey because New Jersey is going to be the focus in a way
Yes.
of our main topic today. We're going to be getting into how the climate crisis has now come to the northeastern United States, where
Mhm.
wildfires are now spreading throughout New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We're in the middle of a massive drought restrictions, climate crisis is upon us. We'll have Dr. Reese Halter joining us. People who remember our previous show will remember Dr. Reese. He's awesome.
Yes.
And so
So let's let's
let
say
me just
proper hello.
let's do the proper hello. So I'm Ted Rall, in case you're not familiar with the TMI show. And over there is my co-conspirator, Manila Chan. You're listening to the Ted Manila Information Show. That's, of course, TMI for short, where we will bring you way too much information. Although I always wonder if there's really such a thing as too much information. After all, it
Yeah.
is the information age. Anyway, we offer everything from news to politics to lifestyle, culture, fad diets, what the kids are up to, the taboo, the occult, anything and everything goes, because we believe you could never.
Disinformation too?
Disinformation, misinformation, cat information. Um, because we think you can never have too much, information. If you're looking for a straight-laced, button-down news program, tune away, run away, cover your children's ears. This show is not for you. It's stuff you know you need to hear about and stuff you never know you needed to know. And hopefully we're going to have a few laughs along the way. We are here live every single Monday through Friday, with some exceptions, like if someone's sick or
I
there's
could
a
get meningitis.
national
And
holiday. We haven't even talked about this. I assume we're not doing Thanksgiving or the day after, but we should talk about that. But
yeah.
normally we're here Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And of course, don't worry if you're not available then. You can always stream it later on your own time. Good to listen to in the car. We're audio and video. You can get us everywhere where podcasts are sold, Spotify and all that jazz. Also on YouTube and Rumble. Please like and follow the show on your socials. Tell your friends. Subscribe, whether paid or unpaid. Of course, paid is better, but unpaid is also very appreciated because it's going to get our numbers up to where we can start selling ads. Don't worry, we won't go crazy with the ads if we get there. So on today's show, we will, like as previously mentioned, be talking to Dr. Reese Halter, also better known as just Dr. Reese or Relentless Reese on Twitter, if you want to get ready for that. And we'll be talking about the wildfires in New Jersey, crazy drought situation, scorching hot weather, just complete, kind of terrifying to people who are living in the northeastern United States. And if it's not terrifying, it ought to be. So, Manila, I think we have headlines.
That's right. After this. Yeah. Now we're going to go into headlines. All right. So as Ted mentioned, well, we're going to go somewhere else first. Over right there. I didn't know Zhuhai, China. Is that where it is? Way down there along the coast. Apparently, a driver killed 35 people and severely injured another 43 others when he deliberately rammed his car into people exercising at a sports center in this southern Chinese city of Zhuhai. I think that's how it's pronounced. So police, well, that's not it. So police detained a 62-year-old man at this sports arena in the southern Chinese city following the ramming late Monday on the evening of the country's premier aviation exhibition by the People's Liberation Army. Police identified the man only by his family name of Fan, F-A-N, Fan, consistent with
I'm
the
not a
practice
fan
by,
of Fan.
Yes, consistent by the practice of authorities in China. Fan was discovered in his car with a knife with wounds to his neck, which police say they believe are self-harm injuries.
Mm-hmm.
He was unconscious, and then he was receiving medical care on the scene. He was apparently, when he woke up at some point, he was dissatisfied with the split of financial assets in his recent divorce, according to a preliminary investigation. Now, it's worth noting that President Xi Jinping says that he should be dealt with appropriately based on Chinese law, and I think
what else
what
is he
that
going
law.
to say? What else
Well,
is he
I
going
think
to
that
say?
law is like death. Like, I think this is an executable.
Well, he killed a bunch of people, so
offense.
yeah.
It's 35. Yeah. I mean, it's 35. He ran over 35 people. So I think this is like a thing for people to remember that we've had this happen, right? And in Wisconsin, there was a dude that took his Ford Escape and plowed through a whole bunch of people at what kind of rally was it, Ted? Was it like a Thanksgiving parade or Christmas parade?
Yeah,
in Wisconsin.
I think it was some kind. Wait, where was this?
Wisconsin. It was like a Christmas parade. It was I forget his name already.
Yeah, no, it was some sort of holiday parade. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Might have been Christmas or something like that. You know, sort of your typical small town, like with the fire truck kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. He ran over and killed like a dozen people or something.
I tried to forget that.
Yeah, awful. It's just awful. But, I think a lot of gun rights activists will use stuff like this to say, well, look, if we don't have guns, we still have cars. We still have other modes of murdering people. So let's just leave the guns alone. Like, which,
I mean, of course, what has happened, and especially with older people, although it doesn't seem like this is the case here because of, they've interviewed the guy and there's the knife wounds and all that indicate sort of a, murder-suicide kind of scenario. But there have been situations where, like, seriously, the floor mat slips onto the gas pedal and people, and they're trying to brake and they can't. By the way, I always tell people, like, seriously, one of the most important things you can do is use those little nubs and make sure your floor mat is like fully attached to the people. Put them in. They don't, because when your car gets washed, the guys don't push it back in, right?
Yeah, they just throw them in.
They throw them in, and then often I've had it where it's like, holy crap, like, the mat is on my pedals. And so
on the accelerator.
There was an incident a few years ago. No, it was a while ago. This must have been more like 25 years ago. But an old lady drove into Washington Square Park in Lower Manhattan in Greenwich Village, and she killed a few people, and people got really angry, and they almost killed her before she was rescued by the police. but it was an accident. I mean, basically, like the floor mat was on her gas pedal, and she kept sort of in a panic slamming it more to try to hit the
Oh
brake.
my
But
God.
pushing the brake was jamming the gas down at the same time, so she was just making it worse. So watch those brakes.
Well, okay. Well, this one was
This is
not an accident.
No.
This man deliberately tried to kill people. So anyway, all right. On to our next topic here. So Republicans have now moved closer to claiming House control. As of yesterday, they have won 214 of the 218 seats that they need for a majority. 16 races remain uncalled. With House Republicans, they would have gained full control of the federal government. They think perhaps next year they're going to be in full control. That's what's being projected.
Trump, they will be.
Trump is expected to name Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Ew. Rubio has taken hardline positions on China, Iran, and Venezuela. Trump then offered at least
so Trump was your guy. Can I just ask you what the?
No, he's not my guy. I just voted for him because he's like.
Well, that makes him your guy.
Well, not by default. Yes, by default, but not because I am a booster.
Marco Rubio,
Marco Rubio is brown Pompeo. I mean, that's really what it is. He's just got other targets than Pompeo, but he's just as Pompeo as Mike Pompeo. So he's Rubio. What the? I don't know. But the Trump land is still saying. They're not saying anything about it. Actually, this didn't come from Donald Trump or his official statement.
Yeah, but it's him.
That's what they say. But supposedly, the New York Times is saying that two people familiar with the inside
it's being
workings,
reported elsewhere too. I mean,
but they're all basing it on New York Times.
Yeah, but it's verified. I mean, come on.
I don't think it's verified.
I
don't think it's verified. I don't trust it. But we'll see. I'm hoping. But anyway, they, concessions I'm sure are being made, negotiations are being made, and I don't know what that fucking pick would be. But
well, I mean, also, I guess there's the question too. I thought it was interesting. There's kind of the implication in a lot of this reporting that the Secretary of State has a lot of latitude, and it's about their own policy. I don't think that's true, right? I mean, I think the Secretary of State carries out the foreign policy of the administration as determined by the president. Own. Yeah, so even if you yourself are a warmonger, the president is set
right now.
If President Obama had told Secretary of State Hillary Clinton not to be an insane, psychotic, warmongering monster, then she would have had to back down or resign in protest.
Sure.
Right?
But I think what people are basing this on is the last, 3.5 years where we have had a senile old man that was in charge, scare quotes, right, in charge, where you then had the shadow government, shadow presidency or co-presidency by Jake Sullivan and Antony Blinken, who I think were, themselves running our foreign policy. And Blinken, I would say, is the one that had a lot of latitude. So I think this is, a little PTSD from the last 3.5 years of having a mentally incapable, mentally unfunctioning president. So then you kind of leave the foreign policy to Blinken, who has kind of just run the roost and just done what he wants, because who's going to stop him? POTUS? No.
Right. But that will not be the case here.
I don't think that's going to be the case here. So I don't know. So then Trump then offered Elise Stefanik, the Republican congresswoman from New York, a role as the UN ambassador. She's a gross, over-the-top, pro-Zionist, couldn't be more pro-Israel. I think she's more pro-Israel than Benjamin Netanyahu himself. I think she will be signing bombs in Israel the way her predecessor, Nikki Haley, did, with love from Elise, like letters to Elise. That's, I don't think what the Cure meant by, that reference, what the Cure meant by letters to Elise. But this is, immediately people should be sending letters to Elise to say, no, stop your Zionist bullshit. She was, so pro free speech, so pro free speech. But then October 7th happened. And then suddenly she's like, the Jewish kids at Columbia are being, assaulted. And
Hashtag
they need a safe
never
space.
happened. Never happened
I know.
once. Never.
But that's what she said because
No.
she's a New York congresswoman, and that's what she's saying. It's her home state, and
Also, I still
that's
have
what
not
she was
heard.
saying.
There's no credible evidence that there were any anti-Semitic statements ever said by anybody, which is kind of remarkable. You'd think that some asshole student would have said something like that, and if they did, it never ended up on a video. It never ended up on a cell phone. There's no evidence. There's just literally no evidence. I mean, it's a lie. Anyway, at least Stefanik. Well, it's a lie because they know it's not true. Well, they say that like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is anti-Semitic. If someone said from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, America will be free, I would not view that as anti-American or anti-anything. Would you?
Or anti-immigrant. It's anti-Mexican.
Well, I don't know. I'm not anti-freedom. I don't know about at least Stefanik.
It's really anti-Canadian.
I gotta say also, what is with? I mean, I gotta say, at least with the Secretary of State role, okay, at least Marco Rubio is not like a military general, okay, so he can be a diplomat, fine. At least Stefanik, though, I mean, UN ambassador, like I expect someone who's like suave, sophisticated, like charming, someone who's the kind of person who walks into a room and there's a dispute and they walk over and they're like, guys, calm down. I mean, I want the U.S. ambassador to UN to be like the consummate diplomat, not a moo cow.
He had Nikki Haley in there last time. It's not like there's big shoes to fill.
I know. Well, yes, I know. Like, there's small pumps to fill, but they're like still very. It's still like that was a bad choice. Nikki Haley, at least physically, exuded that kind of. She had the look. She fit the suit, if you know the Brady Bunch reference, but like, but she's not. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next.
I would say that was
appointment.
That was
the next one's the worst.
Adelson, Miriam Adelson bone. I think the Elise Stefanik pick was throwing a bone to Miriam Adelson for sending $100 gazillion to the Trump campaign. So then you got Lee Zeldin, the former representative, also from New York,
Long Islander,
will lead the EPA. He's expected to gut climate regulation.
Yeah, because that's great.
So
just what we need. The world is burning, right? I mean, the biggest problem with the Democrats is that they didn't take climate change seriously, and the Republicans
it was just a slogan.
Apparently do take it seriously. They want to amp it up.
I don't know what to say about Lee Zeldin other than I remember a guy rushing the stage
dumbass
to try to stab him, and he narrowly escaped being stabbed on stage at a live campaign event last year.
I mean, he's not a total monster. He reminds me a little bit. This choice reminds me of when Reagan appointed James Watt as Interior Secretary. He was a guy who's against the environment. It's like, why would you do that? Whatever. I mean, obviously this is to be expected. He's just going to be Trump's soldier here. That's all.
Yeah. Well, speaking of soldiers, former Green Beret, I think he was captain. I forget his rank, but I used to know him. Mike Waltz, representative from Florida, will be Trump's pick for national security advisor. So he's going to be the NSA. He's moved up real quick. Mm-hmm. He is a former Green Beret who has taken a tough stance on China. He's a hawk on China.
So is Rubio.
Been very pro-Ukraine also. Many years ago,
Trump's not going to allow that. The Ukraine thing that's a non-starter for Trump. No question.
I hope that we can only hope. But Mike Waltz, before I knew him before he was a congressman, not well, but
All right, so what was he like?
Mutual friends. At the time, he was going through an ugly divorce. So what
was he like?
So he was a wounded bird at the time, but very sweet and very charming. And he was a very nice guy, and he seemed like he was a smart man. Green Berets are not dumb. I mean, anyone that knows elite soldiers, like in special ops and stuff, these guys are actually very, very intelligent. And Mike Waltz was that way. And he seemed to me, because we have a mutual person in common, he seemed to me like somebody that has lived through hand-to-hand combat, right, being a Green Beret, that he wouldn't want to see an expansion of war. And somehow he gets elected to Florida, Congress, out of Florida, and it was like overnight. I watched him month after month get more and more steeped into this weird, like establishment pro-war. He was just not the guy that I have mutual friends with. Like it just, I'm shocked. And now he's remarried to a super swamp establishment warhawk.
The creature from the Black Lagoon.
True. So maybe it was the lady that did it for him, like Mika Brzezinski did to Joe Scarborough, just put it down on him so good that it sucked him into that side of the world.
Yeah. Well,
so, maybe the lady put it down on him and now he's pro-war, considering he's a guy that, has escaped death by the skin of his teeth, so I'm a little shocked, but, okay, I guess good on Mike. He's going to be the national security advisor. All right. And then, of course, aides like Susan Wiles, Trump's incoming chief of staff, and advisors like Elon Musk are weighing in on all these people coming through for the cabinet position. All right. Let's move along to a topic I think near and dear to our hearts, Ted. The Kremlin is denying reports that Donald Trump spoke with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, on the phone last Thursday. During the conversation, the supposed conversation, we should say, the U.S. president-elect reportedly warned the Russian leader not to escalate the war in Ukraine while reminding him of the U.S. military's significant presence in Europe. But Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Monday such reports were, quote, pure fiction, while Trump's team declined to comment on his private calls when questioned by the BBC. So this back and forth indicates how much attention is already focused on Trump's potential approach to Ukraine. On the campaign trail, Trump expressed opposition to continued U.S. support there in Ukraine and said he would end the war in, quote, 24 hours, without expanding on how he's going to accomplish this. Now, moving forward, there are open questions over the terms that Trump expects both sides to negotiate under and what he'd seek to use as leverage to get an agreement. Ukraine is heavily reliant on the U.S. for everything from military aid to intelligence in this war, but it's less clear what Trump can hang over Moscow to get a deal done and dusted. Trump has reportedly suggested in private.
That's an interesting assumption that Trump needs to hang something over Moscow.
Right. That's I thought the same thing. Like, why would he need to dangle anything over?
He needs to hang something over Ukraine.
Right. Like, Moscow was ready to talk from the get-go. So Trump has reportedly suggested in private that Ukraine should give up territory to Russia, a prospect Kiev has firmly rejected in order to end this fighting. Even if a ceasefire was reached along those lines, it wouldn't necessarily include a political agreement necessary for lasting peace. So, I mean, fine, even if it's not lasting.
That's an assumption, too, because that's just like sort of like Israel-Gaza kind of discussion. Right. But it's almost like reporters on on conflicts have forgotten how these things normally work. I mean, in the discussion about Gaza, the Israelis have been so bloodthirsty that even just trying to get a ceasefire has been elusive. But in a normal war, ceasefires are absolutely a standard part of their routine. You get ceasefires in order to look and search for and bury bodies, recover injured people, evacuate stranded civilians, move military forces from point A to point B if it's mutually beneficial. Ceasefires are not a big deal. And believe me, Russia and, neither Putin nor Zelensky are going to be involved in ceasefire negotiations. They're going to be looking for an armistice. They're going to be looking for something that permanently, for the foreseeable future, resolves the outstanding issues about the border and so on between Ukraine and whether, of course, Ukraine should be permitted to join NATO and the EU and all those kind of issues. Yeah,
I think that's right. And I think...
And we know where we're ending up. Russia is Russia is going to get everything that it wanted. Russia is
Right.
going to
Like,
keep Crimea and the Donbass.
Why delay the inevitable?
We know where this goes, right? I mean,
it's been inevitable from the
Ukraine will
jump.
not join NATO, which they were not qualified to do even by NATO's own rules anyway.
Correct.
And they will join the EU if they want, because Russia doesn't have any problem with them joining an economic union. And they're going to both sides will declare that they will not view each other as enemies or aggressors or adversaries. Yeah. That's it. I think those were Russia's terms going back at least 2.5 years, and those will be the terms that they get.
As Mark Sloboda said, Russia will end up with everything it wants. Ukraine will be a rump state, and then we'll dust ourselves off in this new administration and just move forward. And we're going to see perhaps a pivot to the Pacific. I think that's going to be the main concern, especially if Rubio is in fact the guy. I think that's where we're going to see it, because both Rubio and Waltz are both China hawks.
That's Trump's policy. That's Trump's policy, right? That's why he's choosing them. Right.
So I guess that we'll just have to wait what in that first 24 hours of a Trump presidency, if this comes to an end. But then, people are denying that they even had this conversation. So
this next story makes me really sad.
Yeah. Well, so this next story, a neurologist has revealed the exact age he believes people should ditch. I got the wrong video up. I guess that doesn't make sense. So a neurologist revealed the exact age he believes people should ditch the beer drinking habit. The idea is advocated for by American neurologist Dr. Richard Restak, who shared the idea in his 2021 book called The Complete Guide to Memory, The Science of Strengthening Your Mind, which aims to untangle the mystery of how our memories work. So in the book, Dr. Restak touches on the relation between alcohol and memory, like blackout drunk, Ted. I feel like that's a thing. Revealing that drinking into your twilight years may not be a particularly wise decision, as alcohol can alter the impact of our neurons, the nerve cells. Quote, alcohol is a very, very weak neurotoxin. It is not good for nerve cells, he writes, adding that from the age of 65, your body has less neurons than before.
That quote, does not make me happy.
Well, Joe Biden, hello. It's essential to abstain from alcohol at a stage in life where preserving neurons is crucial. Now, it may be a myth that the brain begins to lose nerve cells at a rapid rate as we get older. Indeed, recent studies are currently suggesting that we may only lose between 2 to 4% of neurons across our lifetime. However, protecting our brains as we age is critical. In Dr. Restak's view, people should begin to significantly decrease their alcohol consumption around the age of 65, with the goal of cutting out drinking entirely by age 70.
What?
Yeah. No. Well, you know what? I literally only drink on special occasions, like this case, a wedding I was at, and I don't. After I had my son, I just never got the taste for alcohol back. And I don't want to have a drink. I have no interest in drinking. I mean, I only drank at the wedding because it's at the wedding. I don't even have a glass of wine at dinner. I just no interest. So for me, it's
I can't say the same thing.
Great.
And I'm 61 years old. So I took careful note of this. I thought it was interesting, the 2 to 4% thing that we lose our neurons. I mean, people don't understand, it's too simplistic to be like, okay, so, if you're only going to be down to 96% of the neurons you began with at birth, what's the big deal? But the whole point is maybe you desperately have to have 99% in order to just function fully and not Biden out. And it's like, so, I mean, the percentage is just kind of neither here nor there. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, these numbers might be out of date, but chimpanzees have 99.4% the same DNA as we do. And obviously they're significant.
Do they get drunk?
They can get drunk.
They get lit.
But they are significantly different than we are, despite just having 0.6% difference in DNA. So what I'm trying to say is that in biology, a little can go a long way. So, at the age of 61, I'm going to be I don't know, maybe I should pound back the beers for the next 4 years and then just go cold turkey, or I don't know.
I don't know.
Not. Probably not.
Does Dr. Restak provide a formula of how you can like get to that stopping point? Like for me, it was like a natural thing. Like I don't
Well, I don't know. I didn't read the
really drink
book,
anymore.
but it sounds like something I should probably order. Probably sounds like a book I need to read.
Maybe.
Or maybe just
Well-
stop drinking. That'll
Well-
work too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I see our guest has just popped on. We're going to pop him on here in just 1 second. One more headline to get through. And I think this is like a fun, good story before we bring in Dr. Reese. Put this up here, Ted. Thought you'd like this one. So a book published in 1899. It was 51 years overdue at the library. It's finally been returned to a public library in Massachusetts. The book, titled The Early Work of Aubrey Beardsley, was returned to the... Now, do we pronounce this Worcester or Worcester?
It's
Worcester.
neither. It's actually, I happen to know this.
Worcester.
Worcester. Worcester, Massachusetts.
I forgot. I have a friend from
Worcester.
Worcester.
It's Worcester. Yeah.
Worcester.
They would say Worcester.
Worcester. Yeah, I forgot. My friend is from there. To return to the Worcester Public Library in early November. It was checked out in 1973. It had a due date of the 22nd of May, 1973, making its return just 5 decades late. Quote,
Well, I can kind of see why, by the way. I mean, the book Aubrey Beardsley is a very interesting dude. He was an illustrator who did work in black ink drawings. Yeah, he's a dude. He was very influenced by Japanese woodcuts, and he was really into erotic art. So if you Google him, you'll find things like The Climax. You could probably figure out what that is.
Oh, okay. I did not know that part.
The art's really cool. Well, I can see why someone might be like, I might need to keep this a little bit past the due date.
Oh, I guess for that time, maybe like in the 70s. So, okay. Well, so the librarian says returning it to its rightful home 51 years later. A note inside the book from the Cambridge Public Library reads, Alex London, the genealogy and local history librarian at the Worcester Public Library, told the Telegram Gazette that it was a rarity that someone found this. He also said it was rare for such a book to be, quote, in such good condition, adding it was the longest overdue book he had ever encountered during his time at the library. A manager at Cambridge's library, Kathy Penny, told the local news station that it was kind of a feel-good story, a good situation for us in the library world. This is the stuff we live for. Luckily, the Worcester Public Library no longer charges fines for late books. On its website, the library states its mission is to, quote, make
That's probably why they
services
got
and
the book
information.
back, right? I mean, honestly.
Is that it doesn't charge?
Yeah, because honestly, if you knew you owed $5,274 in fines, you'd be like, you know what? I'm going to just pretend like I didn't see this book. Yeah, I'm going to throw it on the fire. I'm just going to
say this. We are living in a real life Seinfeld, because there was a Seinfeld episode about this where I think it was George that had an overdue library book, and he was trying to sneak it back in because it's something very much George would do. And also a Married with Children episode about this, where Al Bundy returns the library book like 40 years late or 30 years late. And we're just living, really, Ted, this is evidence that we are living in a bunch of TV sitcoms coming to life 30 years later.
Yeah, here we are. You do hear these stories from time to time about books being,
which is kind of cool.
I think it also happens when people die, for example, and kids settle their parents' estate, and they find like an old library book, and they're like, "Huh, it looks like Mom kept this out for 50 years. I should just drop that off and return it." I bet it's something like that happened here.
That is definitely the right thing to do. All right, Ted, I'm gonna hit the jaws, and then let's bring in our guest.
Let's do it.
How about it? All right. Changing subjects.
I think I'm gonna advocate to change that at some point.
I protest.
Well, we'll protest. We'll have a protest off. You'll win, but
I control the buttons. Okay,
all right,
you
I'll bring in Dr. Reese. All right, so I'm on fire. My favorite Garden State son, Bruce Springsteen could be the soundtrack to this bizarre wildlife season. Wild because it's happening in New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York, states that rarely, if ever, have suffered the extreme drought conditions and sustained unseasonable high temperatures affecting the eastern U.S. and much of the nation as we speak. Late last week, New York City was covered with smoke from a brush fire in, wait for it, Brooklyn's Prospect Park. Here, we're asking, is a 5-month drought in a part of the country where rain is normal and standard a harbinger of still worse things to come? Trump has just appointed a right-wing zealot to lead the EPA. Will Republican policies accelerate humanity's attack on the environment? Would people take notice of environmental degradation if temperatures were falling rather than rising? Joining us to talk about this is our friend, Dr. Reese Halter, who's the perfect person to talk to about this. He's an award-winning broadcaster, distinguished conservation biologist, and author. His latest book is Unearthly Whales. Follow Dr. Reese on Twitter at Relentless Reese, R-E-E-S-E, and on his website, which is drreese, R-E-E-S-E. First of all, Dr. Reese, I just want to say, apologize on behalf of my former co-host, who you had a contretemps with, and I did not approve. I did not approve of that message at all.
Oh, I missed that.
Oh well, these things happen. Look,
Dr.
I'm a
Reese,
tree.
we see the trees. Where are you? There you are. There you are.
See my mug, but more
There you are.
interestingly, I'm in the forest this morning, as in every morning, and
Beautiful.
I just think we're in charted waters. Now, follow me with this. We have been warned for 40 plus years that the current situation we're facing would occur. And all that we have done, throwing caution to the wind, literally and figuratively, is stoke the fire. So if you boil everything down, pardon the pun, to one term or one concept, it's energy. We derive energy predominantly still from the early plant life that people know as fossil fuels, whether it's coal, whether it's petroleum, whether it's this liquefied natural gas. And then if that isn't good enough, because there's so much of it, we're actually burning, we're chopping down these glorious trees that I'm next to burn to get more energy. And if that doesn't get you, we're using China and India predominantly. So now we're talking about what? That's 2.3, well, actually, it's probably 2.5 billion people predominantly use palm oil in their little Coleman
cookies
stoves
Girl Scout cookies, Dr. Reese. Girl Scout cookies. I hate to say it, but I boycotted Girl Scout cookies when I realized that they were using palm oil to make all of my favorite
palm
Girl
oil's
Scout
in
cookies.
everything, Manila. It's in, if you go into the store and you touch anything processed, it's in at least 50, but could be 75% of everything. But the problem with palm oil, when you burn it, is the emissions, the potency is 4 times that of fossil fuels. And wood pellets are as almost as much as 20% worse at contributing to the heat trapping gases. So where I'm going with this is the Earth is pole to pole on heat wave. And if that isn't terrifying enough, it's at the bottom of the oceans. We lost 10 billion snow crabs in Alaska, but that was the tip of the iceberg. The area of the marine bottom heat wave was 7 times the size of Alaska on the bottom of the ocean. We lost trillions of life forms on the bottom. Now, you may say, oh, who cares about some little worm on the bottom of the ocean or a snow crab? Well, we all care because the oceans are the greatest carbon storage warehouse. So when we when we cook up the bottom of the ocean, it thwarts the ability to absorb and store the carbon, and worse, it's starting to release. Now, let me debunk something. We're hearing all this stuff about the sinks. The carbon sinks are going away. Hooey! They're not going away. What they're doing is the drawdown from the trees, from the seagrass meadows, from the mangroves, from the grasslands, from anything green that photosynthesizes due to the extreme heat is not drawing down the carbon dioxide out of the air. So the drawdown for the first time ever that we've recorded this year is not occurring, meaning that the sink, the stored carbon in the seabed, in the seagrass, in the soils, in the peatlands, in the wetlands, it's starting to heat up and off gas. And it's contributing to this. Now, if that doesn't freak you out enough, the forests are all off-gassing. And the dead trees, we've never seen. There are trillions of dead trees now all over the planet. They're off-gassing. And this is Hollywood couldn't dream up a more horrid situation.
Dr. Reese, is that, like you said, with these billions of dead trees like we saw over the past year or two, like in the Yukon in Canada and now here in the Northeast, that there's just wildfires like we have in California? Is that what's sort of behind
and it's everywhere, Manila. In Finland, for instance, they've lost the rate of death is increased fivefold of the trees, and the decay in the last 5 years of the dead trees. This is up at the Arctic Circle, has increased 9 times. It's so horrific. And it's happening so quickly because every 0.1 of a degree is a big deal. Now, Ted will know this because when you get a fever and you go over 100, or really 99, but 100, every 0.1 of a degree. And of course, when you get past 104, I think it's 104.3, that's the end of it. You cook to death. So we're seeing this cooking to death everywhere. And at the same time, it's staggering because the investments in these banks, for instance, so post-Paris, we're now looking at 7 trillion that's been put into play for new fossil fuel projects. In the last 5 years, in the tropics alone, the banks have supported almost 400 billion new tropical deforestation. So they're just leveling trees. And it's in part for fracking, in part for mining, in part for timber. And look, we've been talking about trees and big systems. The heartbeat of the planet are the animals. We depend so heavily on the animal input in the sea, whether it's the whales and their flocculent fecal plumes that are get this. So if a sperm whale eats something on the bottom of the ocean, which they do, colossal squid 2 miles deep, wrap your mind around that. Drop a car 2 miles deep in the ocean, it'll turn into an attaché case with compression. Never mind these wonderful sperm whales with their radar echolocation hunt the giant colossal squid, the biggest predator prey battle on Earth, 2 miles deep. Then they come to the surface once an hour and they defecate. That defecation is rich in iron and phosphorus and nitrogen, and it short circuits the iron, phosphorus, nitrogen cycle, natural cycle, by tens of thousands or millions of years, and it releases those nutrients so the phytoplankton can grow, can give us oxygen, can provide security cover for everything in the oceans, right? So that's one example. Elephants come to mind in Africa, the dingoes in Australia, the wolves in the North Country. They keep the predators, the prey, they keep their prey, the moose, the caribou, so on and so forth, from eating all of the foliage. So they actually help the natural systems accumulate carbon. We're losing these animals. This is the age of, I've dubbed it the age of agony. We're losing animals left, right, and center. Wrap your mind around this. 1 in every 3 tree species, and there's 73,000 of them, are now facing near-term extinction. In every country, 192 countries that we're in, where trees are, they're in strife. This is a galactic crisis, not a planetary, because we're such a jewel. I don't care what your belief system is. This is the Garden of Eden. We have everything. We've got 2,000 different tree species give us food. 2,000 different tree species give us medicines. This is it, baby. We have fresh water. We're running around polluting the water with fracking horridness. Underground water that's been there for tens or hundreds of millions of years.
Yeah,
sorry to be so.
We haven't found a new planet yet that can replace this one.
Elon Musk wants to go and crap up on another planet if he can.
Oh, it's a shame, and if the second concept, if you had to have, so I introduced energy. The second concept, and I know this will grade the audience, but that's okay. It's truth. We have become an entire civilization worshiping money. And the problem with that is this. Obviously, we need money to exist. But the problem is there's never enough. And yet there's so much money from fleecing Mother Earth every day, 24/7, that people in the hands of, for instance, every 31 hours, there's a new billionaire. Every year on Earth, there are 5.3 plus million new millionaires. Mm-hmm. We're eating and consuming the planet to death, and they're not happy. They're not happy.
Dr. Reese, I'm glad you brought that up. And I have to ask you, is capitalism fundamentally incompatible with protecting the environment?
Absolutely. And Ted, where it goes with this is, I think, I'm boiling things right down. The metric of progress, the GDP, is nonsense. The GDP is fleecing Mother Earth. We need a Mother Earth living economy, and we measure that with a contentment index, and the contentment index looks at how children are doing, how the ecosystems are doing, how our food system is doing, how women are doing, how indigenous people are doing, how we can coexist. It's terrifying. The meanness. There's a meanness in the world today we've never seen the likes of. I don't care what religion you are. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Kindness, kindness, kindness. It's underrated and it's so important. And it's hard for the kids. We've put them in an untenable position, and I'm, for one, am terribly embarrassed because we know better. And if you know better, what the hell are we doing, Ted?
Well, I mean, do we know better, right? I mean, in the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, Keanu Reeves plays an alien who's reporting back to his homeland, and while considering whether or not to annihilate the Earth because we've screwed up the planet we've been given. And he says they know they're killing themselves, they just can't stop it. Can't or won't. I mean, what if? I mean, can we stop it? Are we just congenitally or temperamentally or psychologically incapable of having some of the most powerful, richest countries in the world, let's say the US, China, Russia, the EU, and just sort of telling the rest of the world, this is our top priority. We're going to ramp down, we're going to prioritize the environment in all things going forward, and we're going to help out all the developing countries financially and otherwise, so that they're not left behind. Is that possible to ever happen? I mean, it seems to me like we missed our opportunity back in the 60s and 70s to maybe put a stop to climate change and caused by human beings. And now there's so much energy in the atmosphere that even if we got rid of internal combustion tomorrow, we'd have hundreds of years of continuing global warming, right? Wouldn't we?
We would, absolutely. And that just comes down to failing to plan is planning to fail, and future proofing and taking care of business. But you can't take care of business when fossil fuels each year are getting $7 trillion directly and indirectly in subsidies. You can't, if the indicators are that full steam ahead, which they are, you can't push a boulder up a hill when the conditions are such. But we know better, and it's sociopathic. It's sociopathic consumption, and in some cases, some of the leaders are exhibiting psychopathic tendencies. And
well, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, the Democrats have pretty much ignored and not taking climate change very seriously. Now we have Donald Trump, who, quote unquote, thinks it's a quote unquote hoax. And he's appointing, a real asshole to the EPA, Lee Zeldin. I mean, this is gonna get worse, right?
Oh yeah. Well, at the end of the day, Prince or pauper, we all breathe air, we all drink water, and we all need food. And we've been very, 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 very spoiled because the climate that we are familiar with the last 12,000 years, minus a little blip 9,000 years ago. But apart from that, has been a very predictable rainfall pattern that irrigates our food. And every civilization before us has destroyed the forests, and every civilization before us has collapsed from famine. And I'm sorry to, I'm a killjoy this morning, but that is what's coming. And you don't need to look very far. England had its second worst harvest ever this year. And you can go around the world.
Well, we're here to talk about New Jersey and the Northeast. I mean, look, I've lived pretty much most of the time since 1981 in the New York metro area. I have, rain was never an issue. You could count that rarely would a week go by without substantial rain. It always rains. It has not rained in any significant way in about 4 or 5 months. The reservoirs are dropping. This is like it. Frankly, the climate feels a lot like Southern California right now.
I was just going to say we're used
dry.
To that, Dr. Reese and I.
It doesn't rain. It's dry. There's blue sky. There's a lot of pretty days. One thing I wanted to ask you is if I feel like a lot of people are like, well, it's a beautiful day. Instead of being 20 degrees and snowing, you can go to the park. isn't part of the problem that we're having we're having global warming instead of global cooling? If we were moving towards an ice age, people would be freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
Instead, they're, like, oh, the weather's beautiful. And
Well, it may be, but look, cutting to the chase, every year insurance companies, and they have been for the last 5 years, on average 125 billion payouts. That's a big problem. If you're in California now, you're having a bugger of a time getting house insurance for fire. The other thing is we've changed. Look, we're like a spoiled, indulged brat. For instance, in World War II, when we were fighting the axis of evil, we all, our parents and our grandparents, there was petrol rationing, there was food rationing. Everybody grew a victory garden. There was sugar rationing. If you could, you were encouraged heavily to buy war bonds for the greater good. This me culture, addicted to the screens, has lost the plot, and there's no leadership. There's no Winston Churchill. Let me remind you that Charles de Gaulle ran the French resistance from the English shores. Oh my, let that sink in.
You ain't got to tell Ted. He's French.
That's
He's
true.
French American. So you ain't got to tell him.
Sacrifice, sacrifice for your children.
Yeah,
sacrifice for life,
I mean, I do want to say, when you say we, right, it's sort of the implication of we as a species, we as a culture, is that we're all kind of like making these decisions together. And in a certain sense we are. But in another sense, I mean, you alluded to this too, right? Like, there's the leadership issue. I mean, I wonder if you had a plebiscite in the U.S., for example, that was preceded by a really smart, thorough education campaign where people on the dumb side of this discussion, who don't think it's true, and the true side about climate change actually happening, and they had a campaign, and ultimately the result of that plebiscite was to answer the following question: American voter, are you willing to, in any kind of conflict between the environment and the economy or any other priority, the environment will always prevail by federal law, like constitutional amendment? Do you think we could get, with an educated public, could you get voters to agree to that? I mean, I kind of feel like you could, but
it's the priority.
That's the problem.
It's the priority. It's the leadership. The bankers are calling the shots, right? Street is calling the shots. It's not, this is not about the people per se, because here's the thing: the price of everything will continue to rise beyond what people can handle. And we know this. We know what happened in Yemen. We know what happened in Egypt. We know what happened in Tunisia when bread quadruples overnight. Governments topple. That's a hell of an oversight by the and it's funny because the elected officials, certain elected officials, tend to think of people on the left or the educated ones as elite, rather than they are the elites, and they don't give a shit. They don't give two hoots of the people on Main Street.
You can curse here, Dr. Reese.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Hey, so
but
we have a requested question for you from our producer. Yep. He wants to know: is nuclear energy an environmentally friendly option? Yay or nay?
Could be. I mean, the waste is a problem, no question, but the pound it offers a non-combustion situation. So where we could go in a utopian is a zero combustion world. We're trying to electrify as much as we can. The electrification is a challenge, though, because of how it demolishes the earth to get the lithium, which is a harsh process. on the land and the water and the animals. I come back to this common sense, frugal living. That's what I come back to. But, I'm an old guy. I love to grow things. I love to eat from my garden. And you don't have to have a garden. If you have an apartment, you have a balcony, you can grow there, or you can grow in community plots. But we know when you go into your garden or anywhere in nature, the park, you de-stress. And I beg of you to try not to look at your phone when you're there. Just let your mind be.
Just
We
exist. Yeah.
our
I'm a big fan of that.
our principles are lost. But I'm an inveterate optimist, yeah, and I'm a agitator. And I've got a new book coming out shortly called Sticking It to the Man. It's a manifesto for the under 31s of where we are and what they can do. We all matter. And I'll tell you, let me leave you with this. There may be almost 4,000 billionaires, but we almost outnumber the bastards 1,000,000,000. We have people power. And when people activate and realize that we all matter, we're an unstoppable force, for goodness. And change happens whether the kings, the oligarchs, and all these other ne'er-thee-wells like it or not. And that's all we can, we got to cling on to that. And we got to drive on to that. And, smile more. Do random kind acts of goodness because it's the right thing. Not because somebody upstairs is looking and saying, oh, Johnny did this. Here's an honor for Johnny. No!
Agreed.
Just do it.
And you know what, Dr. Reese, because you mentioned the under 31s, I remember, I'm well above 31, but back in my day, they used to have cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons like Captain Planet, right? That kids watched, and we better understood what was happening. But that was like the early 1980s. I don't know what the kids are watching these days because they're all the disparate collection of stuff on YouTube. Last thing I want to ask you about, Dr. Reese, is we have you on the show right as the opening ceremonies yesterday for the UN climate change conference is happening in Baku, better known as the COP conference, right? COP 29 is what it is this year. It's over in Baku. I feel like every year they do these things and they make a big hoopla to-do about it, but then nothing actually comes of it, and nobody actually enacts anything that they stick to. They just find ways to skirt around to make it look like they're doing things. Like one of them was, like the net zero stuff that they were harping on for several years. A couple years ago, we saw Greta Thunberg, talking about recycling. Then we find out that there's this big recycling hoax, and Europe had been secretly shipping their stuff off to Turkey and China, and they weren't actually meeting their recycling goals. So do you think this year will be any different? No one's even advertising this. No one's even advertising.
It won't be any different. We just came off COP16 for the animals, for biodiversity, and they couldn't agree on anything. But here's the, I guess I really come back to, it's up to each of us. And I just think
as individuals,
if you refuse to buy junk, if you just say, no, do I really need this? What is this? Do I really need it? But we're so influenced by the screen and the convenience. Since World War II, really, for like almost 100 years or 85 years, humans globally haven't done it tough in the global north. The global south different, but it's just making sacrifices, and it's so hard to tell people, though. Some people are fitness gurus, and they know, they won't eat. They love a burger, but they won't eat that, right? So there's a tendency in us, some of us, to be disciplined, and we need discipline, but we need leaders, and we need hope, and we need wins, and we gotta, having, as Ted said, these, in my opinion, deplorables now running the show. They're just going to fleece the planet harder. And let me leave you. I got to go, but let me leave you with this. You know, when you are privileged, and I think, you know, we in America need to understand how privileged we are, because we are. Everybody looks up to us or looked up to us, whatever. But with privilege, Manila and Ted, comes a heavy responsibility to do the right thing. And that's what leadership is, right? To do the right thing. And we really have got away from that. And we have to come back to it somehow, some way. And let's keep these conversations going.
Yes, we appreciate you being here. Let us see your
Yeah,
face as we say goodbye to you. There you are. There's
there I am,
Dr. Reese.
old man Winter. It's 42
You look
degrees
great.
here, Ted. All right. See you guys.
You're up there with the redwoods. Dr. Reese Halter, thank you so much, as always, for shedding some scientific facts on us. Thank you, Dr. Reese.
Cheers.
Go check out his books at drreese.com, everybody. All right. He's so great. He's so passionate. Oh, Ted, you're muted. Oh, wait, I unmuted you. Hold on. There we go.
Okay. All right. I think you muted me.
Did I mute you by accident? Sorry about that.
You did. That happens.
So, because that's the button wives wish we had in real life for our husbands. I'm just saying. So since you're my radio husband, I can mute. I have the power of the mute. No, Dr. Reese is so passionate. And it's hard to squeeze in everything, you know, in like 30 minutes, but
he does a very good job. All right. So I'll bring us out. Always another fun show, and we should have him back again soon. Yeah, maybe after the summit to see if they accomplished anything over there in Azerbaijan, which I think we know the answer to that. But anyway, please do subscribe to the TMI show here, both on YouTube and on Rumble. On Rumble, please become a paid subscriber. It's $5 a month, so we can keep doing this show for you. If you enjoy what you see and find value in what we're doing, please help us keep doing it. We're 100 million% fully independent, and we rely on subscribers to help us not starve and to keep this going, more importantly, to you. So click on that button right below the Rumble chat to help support the show, either live when we're on the air at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, or in the repeat. You'll see the rerun on Rumble. On YouTube, there's no option to become a paid subscriber. Just follow us, become a follower, and that'll help us there. Things will start to monetize at some point in the future. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening to us and watching us. And we will see you back tomorrow, Wednesday, November 13th, 2024 on the TMI show. Bye, everyone. Bye, Manila.
Adios, amigos. See you mañana. Let's check out our new outro. Adios.
Here it is. Bye. Watch the outro.
Bye. Have a good one.